positive intention to continue the method in the future. So that's
Thanks, Vinod. So, very helpful to understand that the data that's in the HMIS resonated with women's voices from the field. And since Dr. Sikdar mentioned that he talked about the data in a panel yesterday, just to bring it to your reference, from 1920, when the average usage of centromin was around 3 million, it went up in 21-22 to 7.5 million. And Dr. Sikdar, would be helpful to understand that in 2017, when Government of India introduced multiple contraceptives to expand the contraceptive choices in line with the commitments to FP 2020, this was not a method that was very aggressively positioned, but it had an organic growth. So, would like to understand what your thinking was, or what the ministry's thinking was around positioning this versus another method, and when you started to see the organic growth. And when you started to see the organic growth, one is the study that we talked about, but what are some of the other steps that you took to get the due recognition to Centroman?
So, on that, I will have a very simple sort of a response, is that at that time, at one go, we promised to introduce 3 methods. One more was the POP, the progesterone only pill. So, that being the case, we were actually from our side, we were not selective. Although you say so that we were not really proactively promoting it. For us, every single method is precious. If it has cleared the barrier of the technical committee as well as the programmatic factors that has been taken care of, for us it was a product which had to be promoted, and we did promote. And we came out with many posters and pamphlets and everything. But at that time, some of the blame should be taken by our development partners and donors, because they were also pro-injectable rather than pro-Centromin. And also because this was a product which was an Indian product, not a multinational company product. So that probably one of the reasons which played, that the injectable thing got a little bit much more promotion, and those methods, they had more echo in the system. But what we did when we went to the hinterland, when we are teaching or telling or training and orienting our ashas, we stuck to this one very strongly, because we found, in fact, we found a lot of purchase with our ashas. They were happy to know that we have a pill which is a weekly pill, to be taken. Even now, if you go, I can promise you and I can challenge you, sitting over here, you go to any single sub-center in India, talk to an asha, she will be able to tell you the whole dosage schedule of Centromin. They will say twice a week, first 3 weeks, and once a week. As I say everywhere, my doctors would not know it, my gynecologist would not know it. Let us be very, very frank about it. ANMs, of course, forget about them because it's a lost causer. But my ashas, even today, they know it, and they carry it in their bags. And this is how this particular thing promotion has been having, because we concentrate a lot on the ashas. And for an asha to get an injectable client at that point of time, 2016, was a bit difficult. But for this one, it was easier. As Vinod very clearly mentioned out, that it was not really a COVID response. It was in the making. People were already using it, just got increased and amplified during this phase. So from that point of view, they bore. Our premise was verified by IPAS's study, which clearly showed that there is a genuine increase across the 3 or 4 states that we went through. And going forward, actually, what we have now done is we are commissioning a new study, a very not just study, it's a very scientific study which will which will pass the rigor of all research and methodically planned and everything. Any of our agency will be doing, one of our agencies will be doing it going forward, and that will not be just 3 or 4 states. It will be pan-India sort of a thing, so that we get the picture from across the country. As I said, whether it was down south, also in the up north, as well as in some of the northeastern states, this increment thing has been a success. And if you are talking of we did not promote well, look at the packaging. Such an attractive packaging. And I had to fight with my minister to get this packaging approved. Let me tell you very frankly. Because at that time when we changed the packaging for contraceptives, for condoms, we were not allowed to have so-called sexually provocative photos. So what did we do? We had photos which did not really mean that much, but yet were stopping half the way. So if you see the condom promotion packages that we have, condom packages now have, is much more soothing, and in fact now it is more of a it's a commercial success. Earlier,
This is a word for
Yeah,
the
yeah.
conference, soothing messaging for condoms.
that's what, because somebody used the word pleasure that day. You remember? Somebody used the word that why not pleasure. We said that the government is not yet as brazen as to use the word pleasure, but soothing probably is a better word. So, so, so now this products of condoms also we are talking about. It has huge acceptance in the field, and not like the initial strips that we used to have, strips of 10, and people will be throwing it around and ballooning up and all that. That thing is now gone. It's now in high demand. It really vanishes off this shelf. So the condom boxes, when it came into play, and then there was a complaint. In fact, many of our service providers in the field, they say, sir, when we fill it up, it gets finished in a day or two. So I then reply back and say, what is your problem with it? When we are giving you free of cost, at the end of the day, we have to use it. So that is how these things have, even the mindsets do not change, that they are finished. That's why that we do not want to fill it up once again. But now we are saying we are surplus with the stocks. So, but anyway, I was moving aside in the designing and promotion part. So now, of course, we are at a stage where if we do not even promote it, this is going to be a success in our country. And Geeta is sitting, WHO is now going to give us the pre-qualification, and we got it included. And Priya is there. Priya, would you like to add the pre-qualification part and the medical eligibility criteria, where we have, this is the product which we have already included in the MEC wheel. It was not there in the WHO wheel, but the India adapted MEC wheel is somewhere that here it is.
Priya, come, you're co-opted to the panel.
So it is not the blue color of the WHO. We always have separate colors for ourselves also for the country. So it's an adapted one. And here we already have included it in our MEC wheel. So Priya, you want to add one or two things about the pre-qualification? You had too much of sleep yesterday, I can see.
Thank you. Soothing sleep indeed. So, what I'd like to add for Sancroman and the future of Sancroman in India is, as you can see, there's a lot of evidence generation, a lot of activities going on in corroborating HMIS data. While that does not really mean that it does not pass the need for having a more in-depth RCT type study, which Sir has already said we will be planning. What the route that WHO is taking right now to support Sancroman is consider pre-qualification. I hope you all know Indian government, the regulatory body is still not a stringent regulatory body, so we're looking at applying for pre-qualification through the manufacturer to our headquarters. One thing I do want to add is, when it started, there was one or two types of manufacturers that were producing Sancroman. In the private sector now there are 9. So it is also available in the private sector. People are prescribing it, even in terms of the gynecologists, they do find it much better. We actually have a study going on with All India Institute of Medical Sciences right now, where 500 women have been enrolled since COVID, and we are following them up to see, what kind of results they yield over time. So pre-qualification and adding to research methodology.
Thank you, Priya, and glad to have you with us and share that perspective. So it's very encouraging to know that a method that started from a government institute, research initiatives, came into the social marketing space, came into the public sector, had an organic growth. Now we're seeing the private sector partnership with the manufacturer landscape expanding. So clearly this is aligned with India for India and India for the world journey, and that the WHO is partnering. The first step for the India MEC wheel has already been taken. But taking a cue from, not the soothing cue, but the cue from, this is going to be the word for a long time. You said that all methods are equally dear to Government of India when they are coming into the mix. As a provider, Dr. Sunita Singhal, just wanted to talk to you about, in my last question, you talked about the unique benefits of this method. But when we look at contraceptive choices and how women make choices and how providers support them in making choices, and Dr. Sikdar mentioned that it's really sort of in the self-care journey where community health workers are also helping women exercise this. Just wanted to understand from you that within the available method mix, while injectables, considering that they've been already used in different countries, and that it's a clinical intervention, was given a little more prioritization, but women choose their own pathway. So where do you see this in the method mix? Are there different points in women's reproductive journeys when they prefer to use a non-hormonal method? So if you can just throw some light on how women's journeys across different methods in the reversible mix happen, that will be very helpful.
So thank you for that question. Well, as I said earlier, so based on the reproductive intent and on the information that they gather from their surroundings, which may be wrapped in lots of myths and misconceptions, influenced by the people around the woman. So the choices of the women vary. So once, one of the facts, if I look at the method mix that we have even today, the female sterilization, is still the most popular method. 68% of women are still choosing female sterilization. So, and there are no promotional campaigns, etc., going on at present. It's just on the auto mode. Now, why is that happening? Because the mindset, the trend which has grown over the past decades is, once the family is complete, let's get done with it. So let's have the final, limiting method. So that is how women choose this method. Now, as far as the delaying methods are concerned, as I said earlier also, that there is always, a hope, a big expectation from a newly married couple that to prove their fertility, to come up with the baby. But then, of course, the trends are changing slowly, and women are coming for methods which are short-acting, and we have also seen some growth in the uptake of the short-acting method. The centroman uptake, the data itself is showing so. Similarly, for the other oral contraceptives. So these are the methods women are following. Now, the most affected, the life cycle of the woman still continues to be the post-abortion and the postpartum period. Immediately, despite the fact that we have more than 90% of the deliveries are happening at the institutions, there is still, there's a lot of scope to focus on there. So here, this particular method, if we come to the postpartum choices for the women in the immediate postpartum period, if we talk about the long-acting, the LARC methods, we have PPI UCD, and of course we have injectables which can be started after 6 weeks, so not when the woman is still at the healthcare facility. But if we talk about the oral pills, now this is one method which women can have, and before discharge she can take it home and start with it, and the further supply she can get from the community health workers while she's still at home. So this is a good choice. It is still picking up, but a lot of counseling efforts during the antenatal period and around delivery period is what is needed, and it is slowly happening. So that is about these particular methods. Now, of course, the newer methods are on the horizon. So let's see how they pick up. So this is the perspective as of now.
That's very helpful. Thank you. Vinod, coming to you, Dr. Sikdar has mentioned the key role that frontline health workers, the ASHA specifically, are playing in centroman uptake, and Dr. Singhal also mentioned that. If you can share some insights from the study that you did on the perspectives of frontline workers and women on their experiences of offering and using centroman, and also share some thoughts on what civil society organizations, NGOs can do to support this organic uptake, that will be helpful. And sorry, after that, we'll open up for a couple of questions. If you have any questions, just keep that in your mind. We will do the fastest fingers first. Thank you.
And I'll try to be fast. So, Regarding Asha's, the hypothesis that we have from what we know about the study is one of the questions that were asked by Dr. Sikdar to us was, what is there something that can explain the sudden jump during COVID, right? And the second question is whether it is. Our hypothesis is, based on conversations we have had with both women as well as Ashas, is that during COVID, women were not able to, they were sometimes having difficulty in accessing their earlier, place of choice. But Asha being there in front of the women, it was her duty to make sure she gets a service. So there was, I think, an added incentive because she was trained. She was already trained, she was equipped to provide this Sencromen to her. The couple of other things is, so therefore I think that is what led to this flip and probably a continuity because women are saying, at least the women we interviewed are saying they are happy with it. There's a 92% intent to continue. Existing continuation rates are good, so probably we'd gain. Now the question is, how do we reach beyond these numbers? Interestingly also, one of the strong quali waves that we got, themes we got was that Ashas themselves had switched to Sencromen. So that was a very strong role modeling. I don't know how much intentionally or, it just organically happened, but it was a role modeling that happened, so there was a confidence. And there is the strength of the switch was interesting with the one data point that 44% of the women we interviewed were using Sencromen is the first. They were getting into modern contraceptives via Sencromen, which again, is a way of the Ashas promoting Sencromen and converting them straight from either traditional or non-users into modern users. So very quickly, where is there going to be the challenge? One is, understanding this even better. Because ours is a dipstick study where we will need to, which anyway Dr. Sikdar says is on the plants. I think that would be very important. And this study could be a good formative research for forming the questions, etc., for the actual research. But one of the challenges I would think where civil society can help, obviously probably in the research, but as I said, the uptake currently seems to be with the older women, though they are low para. How do we reach, I don't know whether zero para, but at least the young, very young, low para women. So probably reaching out, digital, other ways of reaching out is something that NGOs could do. And also, HWC is going to play a very important role for a product like Sencromen. And finally, the uptake has happened, we know that. How do we maintain continuity? So probably we'll have to look at ways to integrate it into existing helplines, continuation conversations, and issues like that. And probably also private sector, the need to push this. Yes, Priya said there is private sector, 7 providers. But how do we get that there? Private sector has always been lagging behind in these kind of products. So how do we move that? That's it.
So the point that you made about Ashas being users themselves and in a way being ambassadors in the limited study that you did also points to the fact that provider bias has a role to play in the method, the way it's offered, and that is an interesting perspective in terms of how it's positioned. So maybe that could be one of the messaging tools for who could be potential champions. So I still have a lot of questions to our panel, but I want to be mindful that the whole idea of this conversation is to share the India experience, to say women are loving it, providers are loving it, program managers are loving it. What is it that can be shared more to make sure that it's widely available? So I like the fastest finger first. Oh my God, I love this. So would you please introduce yourselves? So you, then coming to Jyoti. Padma, Komal, both of you have questions? Fabulous. And then Dr. Khera. Dr. Khera, sorry, women take it first. Please introduce yourself, and if you have a question to a specific panelist.
Sure. Thank you for the talk. My name is Jane Hurst. I'm a gynecologist obstetrician from the University of Oxford, and It sounds amazing, but as a gynecologist, nothing is truly amazing. There is always a downside to something. And I'm just wondering about the post-marketing surveillance that is going on, things like breast cancer risks, those sort of things that might not show up straight away, even though the immediate side effects are clearly quite mild, if anything. It sounds very positive, and including effects on menstrual cycles and things. And sorry, I don't know if you allow sort of a second question. Was that's
Please,
probably
please. Yeah, go ahead.
enough there. Yeah. The other question was, it sounds so good. Are there moves to do an RCT or something in other settings other than in India? Because it sounds like something that we should be offering women, not just in Africa, but basically everywhere. Like why are we just focusing on low-income places if this is a very good solution for women? So they're the two questions. Thank you.
Those are fabulous questions. I think we'll take one question from Jyoti, and from Komal and Padma, and Dr. Kera will come back to you.
I'm Jyoti Vajpayee, and I'm
Actually,
also,
that reminds me, I never introduced myself.
okay. That's Medha Gandhi, and she works for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation India. And everyone knows her, so she needs no introduction. So I have a comment and I have a question. So my comment is that as a young medical student from Lucknow, where this drug was developed in the CDRI in the late 80s, as a young married woman, this was the first contraceptive that I used. And I loved it. But sadly,
You're still young.
my professor discouraged me. She said, there is no large RCT to prove. This is not WHO pre-call. Now, this was my professor in Lucknow, in the place where this drug was developed. I had a lot of pride in it, and I really loved the product, but I discontinued because my professor was skeptical. And you know how gynecologists are. They always listen to the professors. So that's my comment. The second question is, why hasn't a large RCT been done yet? Because it's a great product. And every time I spoke on not national, but international forums, everyone said, is there a study where you can show it has been done in other settings? Or is there a large RCT? Why is WHO sitting behind and not, pre-qualifying it? So that was the biggest barrier for it to really come up. And it took a Dr. Sikdar to take our national pride to that level where a great product is now being used in India. So, and question to you, why did you find out from the women why they discontinued? Is there a study on that?
So Komal will take your question and then hand it over to you.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Komal. I'm working with Care India Bihar. So my question is related to packaging. As we know that it is a weekly pill, but for first 3 months, it has to use twice a week. And the package has only 8 capsules. Just I want to understand, is there any logic behind it? Because it had to be 12 for continuation for 3 months. I just want to understand that.
Great. Thank you. So I think 2 of the questions would be for you. You'll speak later? Okay. So
I'll start. Okay, so thank you for asking those questions, because this will give me an opportunity to explain the mechanism of action of amyloxifene. As I said earlier, and you are a gynecologist, many of you are here. So when we say it's a SERM, so it has a weak estrogenic effect on bones, but a potent, strong anti-estrogenic action on breast and uterus. So you talked about cancer breast and all. So as per the mechanism of action, it does not affect, number one, the ovulation. The ovulation continues. What it does is it acts at the level of implantation. It prevents the implantation. So what it does, it causes rapid movement of the fertilized ovum in the fallopian tube, and at the same time, it affects the rapid proliferation of the endometrium, prevents residualization. So as a result, there is an asynchrony. So when the fertilized ovum reaches the uterus, it is unable to implant. That is the mechanism of action. Ovulation in most women goes on as it is. That is one thing. The other good advantage of this molecule, ofloxacin, is that it targets the rapidly proliferating cells. So as a result, there have been a lot of studies going on as for its anti-cancer potential. In fact, it is given for treatment of benign breast diseases and also many other cancers of head and neck. The literature is full of such publications and papers, and there is a good interest in the research is going on this aspect. So that is perhaps that answer may be helpful. The other thing is that this product, the amyloxifene, is used as a treatment for menorrhagia, abnormal uterine bleeding, and there are good results. Again, literature is full of such studies and the positive impact of this drug in controlling the bleeding. The mechanism continues to remain the same, and that's about the and it has a large therapeutic window, so toxicity levels are low. So these are some very good advantages. But yes, of course, I must also take this opportunity to speak about the limitations that it has, rather the small side effects it has. It prolongs the cycle. So nearly 6 to 8% of women, they get delayed cycles. So the recommendation for that which goes out is that if your periods are overdue beyond 15 days, you must consult a practitioner for this. So that's about amyloxifene. I hope that helps. Right.
Okay, mine is a quick thing. No, we didn't do discontinuation reasons. But but with people who continued as a contrapoint, would be probably side effects didn't really come up as an issue. Most they felt those who previously used other products, which are about 45% of the group that we surveyed, said that they experienced lesser side effects. But we didn't do the other part of it.
I must add one point here, that this product has been added in the US pharmacopoeia in 2010, though not FDA approved, but this is a part of the US pharmacopoeia.
Okay. Coming on to one or two questions which is addressed, generally question I won't say addressed to me. One is about the RCTs. In the RCT thing is very much in the making, and we are going to do it in a very systemic manner and going to approve the protocol for that. So it will be done. The timelines are already drawn up. Maybe in another 1 to 2 years it will be done. And parallelly, what the WHO processes are there are also going to be done. And when WHO takes it up, your question about having it in multiple cities, multiple countries could also be then taken care of, because we also know it's a long journey. It will not be done tomorrow itself. It may take around 4 to 5 years for whole WHO to give us whatever, but it should not stop us from using a product which is very much in use. Secondly, just congratulating my colleague Jyoti here for being brazen enough to take a particular product against the advice of our professor. So that's in our nature. I know her. She's a fighting person always. The point is how gynecologists bulldoze people in our country. I am here to give you the brightest example, because whenever a new product comes, they are the first gang of people who will be up against it, saying, no, this is not right for the country. We are not, as you said, that particular trials and all this is not happen. So the example that I want to quote is there are many examples. When we started PPIUCD in our country, the biggest obstruction which came was from the organized medical colleges and their professors. Unfortunately, none of the professors usually read more of a literature. They just follow their postgraduate students' thesis, that's all. But beyond that, they do not do any of their own research. They are not amenable to learning new things. I'm being very, very, very particular over here. So, for example, in the state of Gujarat, the postpartum IUCD would never take up. It will be just 0% or 0.1%, because the organization of gynecologists and the medical college people ganged up together and they said, we will not allow it landing in our state. That was in many states, and Gujarat was the extreme one. So then I knew, because since I am now a techno manager, a techno bureaucrat, what you may say, so I used another method. So what did I do? I just went to the principal secretary of the state, who happened to be an IS officer, senior IS officers, and I explained to her and convinced her. And I told my own mission director, Vandana Gurnani, who was the batchmate of the principal secretary of that state. So we knew which way to approach. And then moments after that, she just convened a meeting and she said, nothing doing, you'll have to follow it and you'll have to do it. Every gynecologist fell in line, and today the same Gujarat is number 5th in the country in terms of performance in PPICD. It's gone up to 23.5%. So that is how things are done and can be done. So there is a ways and means to get around the bullying of your bosses. And the third one is about your packaging. It was a difficult call for us because, you know, you will require 8 tablets for a whole month, right? Because 2 for the first 4 weeks, it is 2 per week, right? So it's taking care of your 1 month's doses, and it allows that particular client to come back, and the follow-up also is something which is facilitated, because if you give them 3 packs at a time, they will come after 3 months out of your control. Secondly, from 4 months onwards, it's only 1 per week. So do we then split it into 4, a strip of 4? So from the programmatic point of the view, we have to apply a different sort of thinking and brain. So we said, okay, fine, we'll use it as a 8-strip sort of a 8 strips tablet form, so that it becomes uniform across the country. And it then, of course, also another thing is about the CPR, the CYPs. 8 strips actually qualify to be a 1 user. So we had to take that also into account. So it's not a gynecological brain alone which works. It's not a technical brain. It's also the management brain which has to work together to come to some national sort of a standard.
So clearly, while there is WHO groups that come up with self-care guidelines, there are program manager level self-care processes that are followed in the country, and I think that is a very organic way of supporting women in the decisions that they take and bringing providers along as we move forward. So Padma, your question, and then Dr. Khera, and then we'll come to you. Dan, okay, and you also have a question. Fabulous. I love this panel. So can we now make questions sort of brief, because we have a lot of interest in the
Yeah,
room.
I just have, I mean, one question is regarding Dr. Jyoti's question only. It's a big RCTs, because, you know, when we started explaining about Sancromin, like people asked us, you know, where is the evidence? So I myself negate with people if they don't come show me strong evidence. So I think it is very important to kick off very authentically. And you are taking it up, and thank you very much. And second thing, programmatic data in Bihar shows that not only ASHAs, there is a switch between those who have taken first dose of Antara, they stopped second dose and went for Sancromin usage. So we have the programmatic evidence and data also with this. I just wanted to share.
Dr. Khera.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you, Dr. Sikdar and the panel. My name is Ajay Khera. You know, I have 2 technical questions because I am new in this field of family planning. You know,
Oh,
when
Dr. Khera, you're not new.
okay. No, I worked for a long time on child health program. It doesn't matter. No, you know, when the decision was taken to introduce Sancromin, at that point of time, what was the quoted efficacy of this particular product? That's number 1. Is a piece of information for me. And then the second point is, you know, in terms of, you know, NFHs is supposed to be the very high quality data. And what has been the trend and the pattern from NFHs 4 to 5? I looked at the data sets. It says the pill rate improved from 4% to 5%. So whether this product is a part of that, you know, kind of a question. Right. Just 2 points. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Khera. We'll come back. Yeah, one question there, and then Dan, you. We'll first take his question.
Good morning, and thank you for sharing. And I'm Aung from Myanmar.
You have to hold it like this. Yes.
Okay. So my question is to include the Centromin in the method mix and to create the demand and the user uptake. Easy regime is also important, I think. Because the correct and consistent use is important for the effectiveness of every contraception. So my question is, do you have any job aids or tools to assist the women, especially for those with the lower level education status, to follow the correct schedule of the regime? So how did you make the women actually follow the regime, especially for the self-care and the community-based acting? Thank you.
Thanks. Dan Hartman from the United States, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. is there anything unique about this serum versus other serums that would make you want to utilize this, especially given that other serums may have longer half-lives and might be able to be used less often? You didn't mention cost, and I'd be curious to know the cost of this. And the third one is, do you use it prophylactically or postcoitally? And you mentioned several clinical trials, and are they being used prophylactically or postcoitally? And if I could, one last one. So to get pre-qualification, you also need an expression of interest from the policy people. And so what type of policy are you actually looking for to go to pre-qualification? Over.
Thank you, Dan. Can we take one more question, or should we take that in the next round?
Do you have any more rounds?
So, yeah, my question was also on the same.
Introduce yourself.
Okay, so this is Amit from Mamta. I'm from India. So, because there are studies which talk about the post-coital effectiveness of the pill. So, is the government looking into that? Because it was, I think, launched as Tatkal 72 a few years back. So, is the government looking into it as a post-coital pill or not?
Okay, so I'll start answering one by one as I recall. So first of all, the efficacy of the method. So the efficacy as reported after the final trials was 1.63 per 100 women per year, which is slightly less than perfect use of other hormonal pills, but definitely better than the typical use percentage. So that's about the efficacy. The second question regarding the other SERMs. So sir, in the year 1991, this was one molecule which CDRI in India picked up and had, after 30 years of research, trials, this is what they've come up. The other molecules maybe in India, raloxifene and all, if you're talking about the other oxygen. In India, I'm not aware if anybody is looking at them. I think if we have success with one, maybe one can look, if there are better options, somebody can pick up the other molecule and start with it. So right now, this is the only one that I know. There was...
Yeah, the answer is simple. Yes, as of now, we do not have a bifurcation. The answer is yes, you're right. The pill contains the synchromon growth also. Part of it, yes.
Just add to what Vinod said about the NFHS thing, you have to understand that NFHS also moves slowly because this was one of the products or other methods which was not really encountered in the surveys very aggressively. So NFHS also takes its time. For example, although we are saying we have done exceedingly well in PPI-UCD, in terms of the number, in terms of the percentage increase in PPI-UCD, it is not as much as the ground reality is. So although it is showing an increase of around 10 to 15% in FHS, if you ask me, we would have liked to see an increase of around 25% to, or rather 15 to 20%. So NFHS also takes time. Maybe by the time of next NFHS, we will be on a better wicket as far as this survey availability of this product is concerned. And in terms of the quantum that we have in the field, although its performance has multiplied so many times, 7.5 millions, but in terms of numbers as against the other contraceptives, it is still very, very low. So from that point of view, the percentage in CPR has not come up that much, but it will take its, I think very quickly in the next 5 years, it will be there somewhere. Another thing about the cost factor somebody talked about. So cost is something, it's very, very cheap. It is costing the government around how much? 75 rupees for the whole pill, which is less than $1 for the whole pill of 8 pills. So I think that's very, very costly and very cheap and very reasonable. About the expression of interest from the thing, that already has come from the manufacturers in our country. There are about 9 manufacturers, 2 or 3 of them are serious manufacturers. So we feel that this is also will follow its due course in the, have I missed some questions? Any more questions? No. If something. Okay. No, not as a postcoital, we have not promoted it.
How do you train
Okay, so you see, we have actually developed small booklets not just for one method alone. So there's a 15-page booklet on family planning programs as well as methods available on the website of our ministry in English and in local Hindi language, wherein we explain about every single product, their positives, their side effects or the effects, how they work. Everything has been explained there for our field level functionaries from the level of sub-center down below. So, or even the primary healthcare level down below. So that's very lucid sort of a booklet that we have come out with diagrams. So that is something you can also take advantage of from the website of the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Government of India. It's available on Google also.
Priya, you wanted to add?
I'm Dr. Priya Karna, Technical Officer at WHO India. I'd like to answer some of the questions raised on pre-qualification. So yes, you're right, sir. You have to have an expression of interest, but it has to come from the manufacturer. What we've done in the last year and a half is work with government and partners to scope out what all is required for pre-qualification. It's a long drawn process. It has to be done by the manufacturer. So an appropriate manufacturer who has enough buy-in has to be, sort of converted. We do have CIPLA. Actually, CIPLA is a huge pharmaceutical company from India. We are hoping that we can explore that relationship further. In terms of other checkpoints that you need for pre-qualification, that also includes MEC wheel. I think it's an underrated aspect that we haven't spoken about a lot. The MEC wheel is the WHO's medical eligibility criteria. Once you are on the MEC wheel, countries are free to adapt it. It has to be done through a national technical expert committee. And if you see the MEC wheel carefully, you'll see that not only is the pill added, but each condition where it's applicable or not, each condition where it's applicable or not. So for example, age, nulliparous, postpartum breastfeeding, all of that, it's there. And what we are actually supporting now is adapting the MEC wheel in apps and in 14 Indian languages so that the use can further be accelerated. I think that also answers the question on Myanmar on how do people use it. I do also want to touch upon the RCT because a lot has been said about that. There is actually evidence from CDRI and organically generated data that was first done to get Cencromen recognized as a contraceptive is still valid. It is recognized by US Pharmacopoeia, although not as a contraceptive. There are other molecules and other drugs that are similar, and that's kind of the evidence that we also reviewed and took. At this time, where we are really, MEC wheel has been updated. We are working with the Obstetrician Society to make it a part of their continuing medical education so that this is refreshed and hopefully creates greater awareness among providers at all levels, discussions with manufacturers as they are the ones that are supposed to apply for the pre-qualification. It's also important to realize, over the time we realized that the Indian Drug Authority or the CDRI is not a stringent regulatory body, and that has been a challenge, honestly. And to override that, that's where we needed all of this data, all of this evidence. We also have currently during COVID, because we saw such a spike in usage, we also have a feasibility study on through All India Institute of Medical Sciences. They're following up the women. There are about 600 women that are enrolled, and they are following them up. It's been about 8 months now, and the study continues. I also want to talk about the cost, you said, right? It's in the public sector, it's 75, like Sir said, but in the private sector, it's about 100 to 150 rupees INR, which is maybe just under $2. For that packet, and there has actually been a very organic growth even in the private sector, because one of the things that you also need for pre-qualification is a landscape assessment of market availability of the drugs, and that was recently completed, and that's how we know that there are 9 drugs in the market. There are big pharmaceutical players, and I think working on Cencromen with all of you in the last 2 years, I've realized much of it is simply a communication gap. There is a lot of data, there is a lot of evidence, and it is really surprising that such a disruptive contraceptive has not been taken up. It does not have to be just Sencromen, it could be something else. But of course, coming from India, something that was developed in the 1980s, we take great pride and continue to show our commitment towards pre-qualification of the drug.
Thanks, Priya. And as we bring this panel to a close with such interesting questions, 30 seconds from each one of you on where you see the potential for Sencromen in context of self-care, in context of India for the world. 30 seconds.
So I'm actually attracted to talk about the self-care methods that you have just alluded to. We've already in the process of developing the self-care kits across the country in every single hospital as well as pre-SC, CSC sub-centers. There is a temptation to have this Sencromen there in those self-care kits also, but we are also not blind to the fact that there are screening things has to be done before the first dose can be given. That's the reason why it cannot be a part of the self-care kit, but once somebody has started to take it, then it can be very much used as a self-care method, just as it is there in the bags of the ashas who go from house to distribute the services. Going forward, I see a very bright future for this particular product, and hopefully this should come out to be a viable contraceptive with the least side effects and one of the most efficacious method that we have.
So in addition to the communication and the programmatic developments which are going on, I would like to say that we need to also focus on the providers. And it is for the providers to refresh their skills and to give them the updated knowledge and the requisite skills in provisioning quality services. One important fact is that the providers have their own myths and misconceptions, so which need to be cleared through training and training. So once they are clear in their mind, they are the best persons to give quality services. They should not deviate from offering the entire basket of choices of family planning commodities to the woman and not just focus on one product. They have to offer the entire box and give the right attributes, without exaggerating any side effect or without understating any side effect, the key features. So that will, and their responsibility is also to maintain a continuum of care with a close follow-up addressing any concerns that a woman have. So whatever means they use, so that will be an important fact. So the providers are going to play a key role. So we should never lose focus on the provider knowledge, training, behaviors, attitudes about this. Thank you.
I would want to share a concern. I somehow think, some products, some people, bad karma happens. Sencromen is like that. For reasons which are extraneous to clinical issues, efficacy, or women needs, this product has not been pushed to the sidelines. It needed something else, again external, for it to come back. My biggest concern is, as it is reviving, as we are doing all this work, we are going to also have some new contraceptives here, which are going to be of higher interest with especially external people. So then, we all may follow the bandwagon of going that way and dropping this opportunity of this product's revival, which I honestly believe is self-care, is young people, is low parity people. Just need for the hour, but we may drop the ball. That's my concern.
Thank you so much. This has been such a fabulous panel. I will be honest, I was very scared that this is morning of the last day of the conference. How many people are really going to come to listen to this? And for me, personally, Sencromen has a very different meaning. When I started my career working in rural Uttar Pradesh over 2 decades ago, fresh out of university, And this was the method that I saw women using. That time it was called Saheli. It was in the social marketing space. Saheli means friend, to now being Chaya, which means providing a protective cover. It's come a long way. Women were using it, they were so happy with it, and today we're talking about how we've seen in the public sector great strides in how women are using it, and talking today about, hearing you say that how can we take it not just beyond India to select few low-income countries, but to the world. It's really a very reassuring fact, and the fact that all of you've engaged so deeply in the conversation. Thank you so much for your partnership, and thank you so much for your participation, and thank you so much to this fabulous panel. Thank you.